As the chairman of the full committee, Mr. Smith from Texas.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lightfoot, I've already commented on the budget. So let me ask you some general questions, but let me preface them by pointing out the obvious, and that is the American people are absolutely fascinated by space. They're fascinated by space exploration. They're fascinated by the night sky. I think there is a real good reason why the Air and Space Museum here in D.C. is the most popular museum in America. It's not an art museum in California. It's not a history museum even in D.C. It's the Air and Space Museum. And we had an indication of interest in our space program yesterday when we were at Johnson Space Center. And we had twice as many people as ever before apply to be an astronaut. And it is absolutely incredible to me. We had 18,000 applications for 12 spots. And that comes out to, I think, 1 to every 1,500 applications. Probably the hardest job to get in America without any question. But on the other hand, they are our real heroes today and will be tomorrow. When we think about space exploration and how inspired the American people are by it, another example would be the discovery, in just the last 12 years, of 3,500 exoplanets, several dozen Earth-like planets. So people, and every time there's any kind of discovery in space, it makes the front page of the papers, it leads the news at night, and so forth. But my general question is this: what do you think are the most exciting things happening in space today? What is going to seize the imagination of the sixth grader walking to school or the adult in their homes?
Well, I think you kind of nailed it with your preface there. To me, I think there's anything that we do with humans is one piece of that. When you can actually see another human doing something in space, it really is in our DNA to explore, and I think people feel part of that. But on the science side and the aeronautics side, if you look at the discoveries we're making from a science standpoint, when we found TRAPPIST-1, the 7 exoplanets, potential exoplanets around the star, 4 billion hits in our social media, 4 billion in all our different platforms that we have. That's incredible. I mean, that's the kind of reach and interest that people have in what we're doing. And I think it's just the fact that people they're inspired by anything we discover, right? Because you're challenging things that we thought we knew. And I think that's so as long as we're doing the good missions and the big missions like we're talking about, I think the inspiration will be there.
Okay, good. Let me ask you a more specific question and a leading question, and it's a subject that I'm fascinated by. And that is that sometime, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have the capability of analyzing the spectra of Earth-like planets and being able to determine, for example, whether there is methane or oxygen in the atmosphere, and if so, that is very strong evidence that there is something alive on the surface. It may be vegetative, it may be sentient, we don't know. But what do you think we might discover over the next few years that will possibly be the biggest space news in a century?
Wow. We'll see. From my crystal ball perspective, I think really I don't know what that discovery will be. I don't think 10 years ago I could have told you we would have had 3,500 exoplanets, right? But I think what we're doing is we're working on the systems that allow us to make those civilization-level discoveries, the kind that really impact us as humanity. If you look at WFIRST, the Wide Field telescope we're going to put up, we're working that to have a star shade that goes in front of it so that we can actually see even more of these potential planets throughout the universe. That's exciting, and then we can make some plans, right? Not in my lifetime, but we can make some plans on how do we reach out to those locations. So I think if we could, to me, our goal at the agency in the science community has always been: is there life out there? And if so, what is it and where is it, right?
Exactly.
We find that's a civilization-level impact, I think.
Yeah, I agree completely. You also make a good point, and that is it's hard to predict. And sometimes our imaginations can't even conceive of what might happen in the future. A good example of that would be, of course, that it was only 50 years before the Wright brothers flying this sort of contraption, 60 seconds, about 30 feet above the ground, 50 years between that and putting 6 astronauts walking on the surface of the moon. So we really don't know what the future holds. We only know it will be fascinating and inspiring.
And the research we're doing on the International Space Station,
Same thing.
If we find something, we just, that's what we're working on for.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Fascinating questions. Thank you. Now I recognize